Excited to be joined this morning by Congressman Ro Khanna, who found himself in a little bit of a Twitter dispute with our new God King Elon Musk. So great to have you, Congressman.
Great to be back on.
Yeah. So okay, I'll give people a little bit of the backstory, and then you can explain the full backstory. So, Politico reporter put out that you had abstained from a vote that would have subpoenaed Elon Musk to come and testify about whatever he and Doge are up to at this point. That was not entirely accurate, so you clarified on Twitter, and that leads to the exchange with Elon Musk. Just give us a little bit, like, what exactly happened here?
So first, let me just get to the bottom line, which is I want Elon Musk to testify, to be transparent, to be subpoenaed, that what he's doing is blatantly unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. If I was scared about that, I would not have had on Twitter, knowing that he follows every one of my tweets, made that very, very clear.
And we can put that up on the screen, by the way, what you can continue talking.
And within minutes of me putting that tweet up, he tweets back, "Don't be a dick." And we get into it because I said to Elon, I've said this privately to him, I've said it publicly. If you want to have an exposure of waste in the government, then the best way to do it is to have sunlight. Come, have your findings, show them to the Congress, and force us to cast up and down votes. I got hammered from my party in the beginning when Musk was at Doge. I said, okay, if he has wasteful spending on the Department of Defense, I'm willing to hear him out. But I was
one of those people that
so it's not like, I got hammered, but I said, when you're doing something that's fundamentally unconstitutional, you can't be the decider of what is wasteful spending, and that is just a blatant violation of Article 1. And so, I will stand up to him and have very, very clearly. And what got noticed, actually, ironically, was my tweet, not any of the committee's efforts, because people know that I have had a relationship with him for 15 years, and I'm willing to call balls and strikes. Where he's wrong, I will be the loudest in standing up for the Constitution.
Yeah, how did you meet him? Do you remember your first interaction with him?
I do.
He represents Silicon Valley for people.
He does. He's never supported me in terms of politically, because he actually wasn't very, very political. But I met him. He blurbed my first book when I wrote a book about manufacturing in the United States. Someone, Esther Wojcicki, who's known in the Valley, introduced me to him. He blurbs the book. And then we got into it on Tesla, because he was begging Anna Eshoo, who's the neighboring member of Congress from Silicon Valley, for a Tesla loan from the Obama administration. I was in the Obama administration.
You were Commerce Department.
Commerce Department. And there are those of us saying, well, okay, but you need labor neutrality. And we don't get labor neutrality out of it, but I'm active on the record in Fremont saying that Tesla should unionize. And so he knew we've known each other for years. But I've said Tesla obviously was a great company in terms of electric vehicles, but should unionize it. So I've known him for many, many years.
What do you think he wants?
He's maniacal about when he believes in something. I mean, those people who say, okay, he's just in it for financial reasons. That's not my read on him, though I think he should have financial disclosures like I do, and there shouldn't be conflict of interest, and he shouldn't be the one deciding. But I think what he believes that he's out there in a mission to save the American people for $36 million of deficit. And it's actually a bigger problem, because when you have an ideological drive like that, and when you're Elon Musk and you believe that you've been right time and time again in the private sector when other people have been wrong, he's basically thinking, okay, Khanna's standing in my way, I'm doing great service for humanity, and anyone who's in my way is going to be roadkill. And that's why it's so important to stand up to him, and to stand up very, very clearly and say this is unconstitutional.
Having the richest man on the planet also be one of the most powerful people in the federal government is itself a unique situation, but he also controls X, Twitter, which is still, despite his best efforts, is a central organizing platform for how we understand public sentiment. And so I'm curious if your colleagues or you think about his power over that platform as your colleagues think about how hard to go after him. Because he could, with the flick of a switch,
he can nuke you on Twitter.
He could nuke you on Twitter.
He did. And I knew he would, right?
No, but he could suspend you. or do
Or all of a
something.
sudden you're getting like
Yeah,
2 likes and 1 retweet.
All of a sudden
Or-
your follower count starts to go down, and people aren't really seeing your tweets anymore. I mean, this has happened to many people who have come after him on Twitter.
Right. No, I mean, look, he in my case, my reply to him saying "Don't be a dick" got more views than his actual tweet. So, I mean, in my case, so far at least, he hasn't done that type of censorship. But I do think it's a problem more generally, which is why we need many more platforms, which is one of the reasons I was defending TikTok and saying that we shouldn't ban TikTok and we shouldn't have Musk or Meta acquire TikTok, because you need alternative social media platforms. And I think TikTok actually is a place where we've gotten the most response, frankly, on standing up to Musk. And we need more social media platforms. So we can push back on Musk, et cetera, but that's going to be important. But on the platform, but what we really need is antitrust enforcement and more platforms coming up that where progressives can have a voice.
One of the things Ryan and I were talking about is like Elon describes what he's doing as a revolution.
Yeah.
And I think that's accurate. I mean, you don't go into the Treasury Department, and now we have new reporting that they are changing the code, that the New York Times says that there were emails flying around saying we want to use our access to the Treasury payment system to freeze funding to USAID. I don't have to tell you that USAID is authorized by Congress as an independent agency. Elon Musk and no one else, Donald Trump, can't just single-handedly say, we don't like this agency, we're getting rid of it, or we're subsuming it under state, et cetera, et cetera. They're doing that. They've gone into the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, into NOAA, GSA, the list goes on. And none of this congressionally authorized. It's obviously a constitutional crisis. They have a broader plan to, have this go to the courts. Whether they even abide by court decisions is an open question, I think, as well. There's already indications that some of the court injunctions are already being ignored. So while he's doing what he describes as a revolution, we were earlier talking about like, oh, they're trying to keep themselves free from FOIA. I mean, it just feels so small ball.
Right.
Compared to the grand plan that they are executing before our eyes.
Yeah.
So how are you grappling with that as a member of Congress? And what are the conversations like among your colleagues about about the gravity of this threat?
Right.
And how to truly push back against it in a way that's not just going to be sort of like impotent or pointing to like, you weren't confirmed by the Senate and where's my FOIA request?
Right. Well, you're asking what people in my district around the country are asking, which is what the hell's the plan? And why don't we have a clear plan from the Democratic Party to meet the moment? Because I think you actually understand Elon really well. He views this as revolutionary. He views this as there's a $36 trillion debt, and Congress has been part of the problem, and that he's not just going to be some bureaucrat who gives a report to Congress. Because that's what when you say, well, why don't you just get the transparency and the sunlight? He's like, I'm not just going to just give some report to Congress that they're going to disregard, and I'm going to try to stop this.
I'm going to be CEO of the country,
right,
and rule it in the same dictatorial way,
right,
that he rules Tesla, Twitter, SpaceX, et cetera.
Yeah. And one is a company. I mean, fine, it may be a great company, but a company is not even a few pages in the American story, right? This is a much, much bigger thing. This is a country that won the Revolutionary War, that wins the Civil War, that wins World War II, wins the Cold War. It's the greatest enterprise ever. So you can't have one individual do it. But I say that so we understand his psychology, and it needs a equally tough response. What is that response? Here it needs to come down first to the debt ceiling. We need to have every House Democrat and Senate Democrat say, we will not give a single vote to the debt ceiling increase unless Donald Trump, in the beginning, commits in ironclad writing that he will spend every single dollar that is appropriated and authorized by Congress and honor Congress on every agency. And you know what? Donald Trump's going to fold. You know why he's going to fold? Because when the stock market went down 500 points, he folded to Prime Minister Trudeau, and he folded to President Sheinbaum. And the reality is that the Democrats need to be strong. Who's asserting the will of Congress? Like, it's not, we're going to go FOIA requests. It's like, you want to crash the economy? Then defy the will of Congress.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because, again, they have control of the Treasury payment system. So what is the response if they say, okay, that's fine, we just are going to ignore the debt ceiling? and we're going to just pay the bills.
14th Amendment.
We're just going to pay the bills that we want to pay. We just want to pay the bills that we want to pay. And, you know, I mean, I think the debt ceiling is a ridiculous, you know, absurdity that we even have it.
Right.
And so you could easily say Trump saying, we're just not doing that anymore. And we're going to at Treasury, like, pick and choose what funds go out, as they already say they are doing and want to do.
Well, I think if they actually do that, they're going to lose the Chip Roys. I mean, where Chip Roy and others would come in and say impeachment or other things. I genuinely think there are 30.
That's hard for me to believe, Congressman.
Well, I'm not talking about the average Republican, but there are 30 people in the Republican caucus, the Freedom Caucus, who have stood up to him. They stood up to Elon Musk before Trump was inaugurated, and they said, Elon said, let's blow up, this deal, and they stood up to him on that. And can
I tell you what I'm looking at? You know, Pete Hegseth his confirmation was in big trouble.
Yeah.
And Joni Ernst in particular, who is herself a sexual assault survivor and was deeply concerned about his comments saying women can't serve in the military, et cetera, she seemed like she was a no. And then Elon comes out and says, I will drop an infinite amount of money on the head of anyone who opposes any of the confirmations. And lo and behold, Pete Hegseth, looks like all of them are going to ultimately get through. So I just don't see, I mean, even with the spending flap that happened in December.
Yeah.
I mean, Elon drove that whole train and again threatened to use his billions and billions, soon to be probably trillions of dollars to primary anyone who didn't give him the bill that he wanted. And it worked. Chip Roy and all the rest folded like a deck of cards.
They didn't fold on increasing the debt ceiling, and Elon didn't get $1 actually saved. Now,
But he got the restriction on investment in China.
Yeah,
taken out.
that he may very well have. I'm not saying that he doesn't have influence, but I think if you have a group of House members, 20 to 30 in relatively safe districts, and you see Elon's numbers have been declining. I mean, the big question for Trump is how long is he going to have someone who is as unpopular as Elon is becoming? I do think the House can assert back. And at the very least, the House, we need to have a plan of what we're going to do to take the fight to Trump. Now, maybe you're saying, okay, we take this fight and then Trump makes a counter move. Right now, I think why people are so upset is they don't see us having a real plan. I mean, at least Senator Schatz had a plan. He said, okay, I'm going to put a hold on every nominee to the State Department, including Stefanik. But what we need from our leaders is 3 or 4 things that says we are going to assert the power of Congress. We're going to punch back in terms of our power, and then we're going to wait for Trump to make the next move. The only people who are winning against Trump are President Sheinbaum and Trudeau. They're the only ones who've gotten him to fold on anything.
Is there any regret among Democrats? So the other day, while Oversight was doing whatever it was doing, AOC was having like an Instagram Live that had like tens of thousands of people tuning in. Like, she's clearly still one of the party's like leading messengers.
One of the best communicators. Yeah.
And
authentic.
Yeah, and you watch some of these rallies. No offense, just deeply cringe stuff coming out of Democrats.
Schumer was not made for this moment.
Al Green was shaking his cane. Any regret from your colleagues telling AOC, get in the back of the line, because it's not as if Democrats aren't doing things. Like, there are a million lawsuits that have been filed. Like, lots of things are happening, and people are active. But there's no national voice.
Now, well, let's take an example, this oversight hearing. Mm-hmm. The fact is, everyone is yawning about the subpoena until I tweet out that Musk should be subpoenaed because of the missed vote, and then Musk replies. Imagine if AOC was the ranking member leading that. Right. It would have been a very different case. Mm-hmm. That would have been national news.
And he's fighting with her.
Because he loves to fight with her. He loves to fight with her. She would have said something. He would have responded. That would have been national news.
And now Democrats would look like they're doing something.
Right. It wouldn't have taken my missed vote to provoke that. So I think it was such a blunder not to put her there. What I said to moderate Democrats, because I was one of the first out of the gate to endorse her, support her, rally support for her. And I said, okay, you disagree. I get it. You disagree with AOC and her position on Gaza. You disagree on immigration. But she is not running to be ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. She is not running to be ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. She is running to be ranking member of the committee that punches Donald Trump. Like, isn't isn't this the role where she would be the best in our caucus? And I mean, this is where the Democrats need to get the next generation out there. The optics of some of the stuff at the rallies has just been cringe. I mean, because it looks ineffectual. It's not an actual plan, and it doesn't look like we're flexing our power. Like Congress, you know, it's not like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are out there protesting Congress. They're saying we have power. Well, we need to act like we have power. We do. We have the power of the purse, and we have the power of votes and confirmation, and we need to stand together.
What are you hearing most from your constituents? Like what kind of, first of all, are you getting like a flood of calls? Is there a lot of energy? What are you hearing from them? What are their concerns? What are they, you know, what is that vibe like?
So for 2 months after the loss to Trump, it was pretty muted. But as soon as Trump became president and Musk stopped those payments, I think a light bulb went off. And in my last town hall this weekend, over 600 people showed up. People holding up signs, stop the coup, stop the Musk coup, in a sense, bluntly, that the Democratic leadership has not been tough enough, that our response has not been clear enough. I do think Hakeem has an opportunity to be the voice because it's not coming out of the Senate. I think this fight in the House debt ceiling is that opportunity. And one of the things we got to do, yes, take on Musk, but we also need to take on Vance and Trump. I mean, they're the ones who are ultimately responsible, and not give them a free pass on taking away funding for kids in working class neighborhoods for their schools. I mean, taking away money for kids with special needs. And we've got to just be tougher as a party.
You've been going at Vance a little bit. What's your sense of his position here?
Well, I think he wants to be the nice guy. He's kind of wants to be, I'm the reasonable guy. I think Tim Walz made a huge mistake in that debate by not going after Vance. They were coached to say, just go after Trump. And Vance comes up as this like, oh, I'm reasonable, giving Trump the sense of that, oh, he's appointing reasonable people. Right. And what the reality is, Vance is driving the nominations of Hegseth and Gabbard behind the scenes. He's the one pressuring the senators. Vance hasn't raised his voice once to question why we're going to get rid of all of these programs for working class kids in the Department of Education, Pell Grants, Title I funding for decent schools. He's basically quiet. And the Democrats have an opportunity to define him for the extremist he is, and not let him just kind of be this reasonable person. I mean, look at what the Republicans did to Vice President Harris.
Yeah, and to Walz as well. You said that constituents showed up with signs that said, you know, stop the Musk coup. Like, do you think that language is correct? Do you think it is a coup?
I think it's a constitutional crisis. I mean, I think a coup would be if he succeeds, but I don't think he's going to succeid. I think we will push back ferociously.
We'll go with attempted coup?
Attempted coup.
It's certainly a violation of the Constitution. I mean, coup, you know, these terms get thrown around, and I'm not saying that it couldn't come to that if we're complacent, but if we push back and we make sure that we stand up for our constitutional prerogatives, I think we have them on the defensive. I actually think they have really overreached. I was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania this past weekend. I met Tracy. She's at a barbecue place. She's a part owner. She said, you know, I voted for Donald Trump. I said, that doesn't surprise me. Why? But she said, I have some concerns. I said, why? She said, well, I voted for him because he was going to make sure that there were no taxes on overtime pay. I voted for him because he wasn't going to tax tips. I was like, wow, these messages are really getting through. I said, what about Kamala Harris? She said, you know, candidly, I considered her. I really did. But I felt she was a phony. And I said, well, what do you think now? Well, I'm concerned. My mom is in the hospital and Medicaid is maybe cut. So there is a chance to be talking to people like Tracy. We've got to go on the offensive and be willing to assert our power.
Last question for me. Are you sensing any institutional prerogative from Congress? Like, if this continues, this idea that Elon Musk and Donald Trump can like pick and choose where they spend money, Congress doesn't really have a role in this like
Congress is basically irrelevant.
Yeah. Congress could like set a limit.
The ceilings,
yeah. And then if you need more money than that, you have to go figure it out some other way. but that becomes it. And if all you're doing is setting a ceiling, you don't need certainly don't need 535 members of Congress to do that. That's just two people. And it basically just Trump telling them what to do. So is there any sense from Republicans that like, okay, we are ideologically and politically Republicans first, but secondly, we serve in this institution that is potentially being wiped out as a force in American politics, and we should do something about that. Is there any sense of that? Or is it more, we're so partisan now that that's okay as long as the Republicans come out on top in the new system?
So we need to make the argument you made more, because where are the 3 Republicans that are going to stand for the institutional prerogative of Congress? And there may be, if this fight happens with the debt ceiling. I mean, it's someone like a Chip Roy or something. But the reality is there's fear. And the fear is that the people who have taken on Donald Trump and the Republican Party
are gone. Yeah.
Are gone.
Yeah.
You know, they're Adam Kissinger, they're Liz Cheney's, they're a whole list of people who are not even as famous. And the ones who have stood with Donald Trump are National Security Advisor and in the cabinet and are going to be UN ambassador. So if you're a politician on the Republican side, the lesson is pretty clear that you stand with Donald Trump if you care about your career. And people rationalize it, saying, well, he'll be there for 4 years and then something else will happen. And so it's a palpable fear that's not irrational about losing their jobs. And that's I think why they haven't spoken out.
Yeah. Well, and like I said before, now you have the additional enforcement mechanism of Elon Musk being willing to spend, which would be a trivial amount of his net worth in order to primary and take out anyone who doesn't fall in line.
Right. That graveyard was filled before Trump had access to Musk's.
To unlimited.
Money.
Virtually unlimited money for
and he would spend
primaries.
it. He will if he feels
it's not an idle threat.
It's not an idle threat, and for a House race that could $10 million, $20 million, even if you don't beat an incumbent. People. This is you instill an enormous amount of fear.
Yeah.
So we're in a situation where this is a real fight for constitutional democracy, and I think what people are frustrated at that watch probably Breaking Points or come to my town halls is they don't see the Democratic Party right now rising to the moment, understanding the stakes, taking on the fight, having a clear plan, and saying, okay, we're going to push back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're really on the Elon Musk Doge side. They're, as Ryan said to me, they're really going for it.
I think it's pronounced doggy.
I prefer that pronunciation. Doge is the other one you go with.
Yeah, Doge.
They're really going for it.
Yeah.
There are no guarantees they'll succeed, but they are mounting a revolution, and so people want to see a response that is commensurate with that true threat. So, Congressman, we always appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
I guess it worked out for you to miss that vote since it drew attention to the whole
It drew
situation.
attention.
You got to make clear your thoughts about Elon. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.